what I'm going to talk about today is the contextual security intelligence, the CSI. It's a different approach to the security as the traditional ones. You will see why I say that, and watch out. In the meantime, my colleague is stealing your credentials, so the only chance that you get prevented from these, it's using our solutions. Good. So in the beginning, you already saw an introduction, so I skipped most of my introductory slides. But this one is pretty much summarizing Balabit, and this is where we are and what we do. The headquarters and the development center of Balabit is in Budapest, so we are close by. We are also from Budapest with my colleague, and we are happy to be here and able to present you. Good. So I used to start with 2 slides. One of these are what you see now. And the reason why is that which one do you like the most? This picture or this picture? Where would you like to live? How would you like to work? Which environments? In the castle or in the open city? Castle. In the castle? Good. Yeah, I thought so. Everybody says that. We think that it's slightly better to live here than in the castle. And the reason why we think it's you see that there are no such constraints. There are no huge walls. There is no tiny path to the actual castle. But there is a huge open space where you're allowed to do whatever you want to do without having constraints which are restricting you, which are keeping you away from gross personal or company development. So what we say is a slight change in the focus of what you are actually, how do you control your infrastructure and how do you control your employees. Why is it so? What we think is that the traditional security approaches are not enough. And I have to emphasize, because many times the audience ask me that if they think that there is no use for firewalls, intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems. We don't say that. You have to use them. They are the first line to keep you safe and secure. But on the other hand, it is almost impossible to predefine and to set all the rules to prevent intrusions, prevent data breaches. How would you define, like it's like an economic model of the world. If anybody could do that and they could forecast the markets, they would be actually the leaders of the world in one man. It's impossible to do that, simply because we have constraints in our minds and we cannot think of everything. Point 2 is the constant fear of the breaches. So what we do is we build this castle around us, and we are always afraid that something gonna happen, somebody gonna break into it, they're gonna steal our data, they're gonna explode our gunpowder deployment inside the castle. So what would you prefer the most? Living with this fear in yourself, or be more free and you have an eye on your critical parts, on your critical infrastructures? If you have the eye on it, you can interact close to real time, or you have the constant fear in yourself, and you have it's sometimes blocking you. Giving a real life example from the IT world, that for example, having these rules, a simple change request in a big organization could take weeks. So, for example, I saw the slides. I didn't really understand much. Sorry for that. But in these slides, you were explaining the VMware infrastructure. So, for example, if I want to extend my memory in a virtual machine, in a big infrastructure, that could take weeks, because there are so many constraints and preset rules that wouldn't allow me to do it. I would need it for my work. So this is my daily work to praise that memory and run my programs on that VM. But I'm prevented from it because we all in the organization, we have this fear of the breaches, fear of something goes wrong. And it's blocking you from your work and from the growth. And one of the most important points in our understanding is that you have the tiny bits and pieces of the information coming from various sources, but you never see the context as it is. So if you think about it, that you have the firewall logs, you have the machine logs, and so on and so forth. We are a log collection, log management company, so I'm not saying again that the logs are not enough. The logs are good, great to have, it's essential to have. But without having the whole picture in your head, and without seeing what exactly happening in your infrastructure, it's really hard to point out if it's a real threat for you or it's somebody just doing his everyday job. Why do we say this, and why do we think it is really, really important to have the context and be aware of what actually happening and seeing the whole picture? You all have the firewalls, I believe. I heard the words of my colleague from Palo Alto. They are one of the best cutting-edge firewall guys and security guys also. Semantic, endpointe security, intrusion detection systems, the best tools what you can have, honestly. But what about those who are already inside? What about those people who you trust, your own employees, your external service providers? Let's say you are a financial institution, you outsource your network management to an external provider. And for some reason, this external provider, bribery, social engineering, whatsoever, some of these admins' credentials were stolen. They have the right to come through directly all your initial prevention systems, everything. They have the right to log in through VPN, go through the firewall, access the sensitive database, network device, whatever. And what could you do with it? Okay, you have the endpoint security. You can detect if he's trying to deploy malware or trying to steal data. But what if you can prevent it beforehand? So what do we see here is that having the context around certain activities and having the ability to interact with these actions in close to real time before they can execute malicious or harmful actions, that is definite advantage compared to the traditional security gears. In the contextual security intelligence, the main points are the real-time knowledge of every single action. How do we reach it? I will talk about that later in more detail, that with the log collection as the basics, the essential, the most essential part of the security gears, and session monitoring, you are able to monitor every single action, not only on a high level that you notice that there was a login event to this server, okay, but then what happened? Therefore, we have the activity monitoring solution. After that, what we do is we are collecting data from various sources, from the user monitoring, from the log collection, and we build a baseline. This baseline is the business as usual baseline. So what we do is we learn how you behave. It's like your fingerprint or your body language. It's unique for everyone. So what we do is we learn how you behave, what commands you're using, how do you move your mouse, whether you are using touchpad or external mouse usually. Keystroke, dynamics, not only speed, it's important. Patterns, what you are usually using. So with the log collection and the monitoring, we are able to build the business as usual baseline. And what do we do to discover the anomalies is compare your current actions to the baseline. So we detect in real time the anomalies, the deviances from this baseline. And if this deviance is above a certain threshold, we can interact with it. What we could do is we can reach back to the monitoring solution, and we can interact, block the connection, deny the user in Active Directory or any user directory, and so on and so forth. And yes, this is the actual immediate reaction. Why is it good for you, and why is it good for us? There are certain benefit areas right instantly at the deployment. So the breach prevention, I already talked about it. The security operations. I will have some slides also about this. I wanted to skip this initially. So, about the breach prevention. What I said in the beginning, that it's impossible to define all the rules. That's true. We don't say that there are no rules needed. So what we can offer here is actually with the shell control box, with the user monitoring solution, you are able to set up predefined rules, certain commands to be blocked, certain actions, certain windows which should not be open. So you have a first line of initial breach prevention. Then, with the user behavior analytics, we are able to detect if an account was hijacked. So if Tamás is successful by the end of my presentation, we're going to have some of your credentials. If you're using our solutions, it will turn out instantly that it's me, for example, who's using your account, not you, because I'm a different man, I have a different digital footprint. And we are able to interact really in the beginning of the kill chain. From the security operations perspective, imagine that you saw an unusual login entry from China. I didn't really understand again, but I saw that there were some countries listed, IP addresses, an unusual IP, unusual countries being detected. What would you do? You start a day-long investigation, go to each host, check if there was a login. You use your SIEM solution, which is great. You will be able to find out what happened. But you have to put it together manually from the bits and pieces, generally, right? So if anybody has a tool which can point you exactly to the actions which could be threat for you, please raise your hands. Yeah? Okay. Let's talk about that later, please. Good. So, and as I said, the automated security reactions and intervention. When we detect something above these thresholds I mentioned compared to the normal business, we can interact automatically without human interaction. I'm not saying that we should or you should block the user's activity. Well, you can trigger an alert that your security operations center has to go there, look at those guys, follow their actions in real time using the session monitoring solution. Or if there is above a really critical threshold, then you can obviously block the actions automatically. After all this, what would you have is a risk assessment for your users and for your, I would say, entities, which could consist of machines, machine accounts, and so on. So not only the humans where we are focusing on, but you will see a definite risk for the certain machines. You will see a different risk for the certain machine accounts. You will see the risk on the timeline. How risky is, for example, Monday morning for you? If your employee is coming to work drunk, dummy example, well, you will be able to identify who is the one who didn't log in, for example, in the morning, or if he did log in, he chose a wrong host and started to work on an environment where he should not work. So you will have a clear vision and clear picture of how risky your users are and how risky the parts of your infrastructure. And talking about compliance, it's a tough question usually, because companies tend to spend incredible amount of money on compliance. And usually the money you spend on compliance, people tend to consider it wasted money. It's governmental regulations, international regulations, and you don't see the benefits of it instantly. You only see the benefit of the compliance expenses when you have a breach, you have an attack blocked, but you don't see the instant benefit of the amount spent on this compliance. What would we offer here is an instant return on investment with the compliance. So having this security gear, you would have the data breach prevention, you would have the risk assessment, which is initial for many compliance and many standardization, so ISO standards and so forth and so on. You would need to have these assessments. And with this solution, you are able to realize a value instantly on your compliance expenses. So just a short example, what do we think about the human attacks and how do we see it? So in the beginning, you see that there is the discovery part, the 1, 2, 3 points, and there is the initial intrusion point. At the initial intrusion, you have the firewalls and the traditional security gears, which could already prevent these attacks. But what if, as I said in the beginning, if it's coming from internally? So when the intrusion is being done, and for example, your database administrator who has the right to that certain server starts to run pgdump command in a Postgres database and want to steal your customer database and put it into a text file and SSH or SCP outside of your networks and copy it somewhere. You already have a clear vision of it. It is allowed for him to do it, but with the SHA control box, you already have a clear picture and the whole chain recorded, what his actions were. So by this time, you have a time frame to prevent the certain actions. If in an unlucky case, it would come to a data exfiltration and you wouldn't be able to prevent this action, what you could do is start investigating. Again, what I said is instead of spending hundreds of hours in certain cases to investigate and many human working on that case, what you could see with our solutions is that it puts you a laser focus onto the important. So if anybody interested in a real life demo, how does it work, please come to our booth and I can show you. I won't have enough time to do a real time or real life demonstration here, so I will use my slides only. But it's really interesting how you can get the focus and the clear vision on what is important and how you can optimize your actions, both in the preventive and both in the forensics phase. Well, just to give you an insight, how does this intelligence suite works in action? So we have the privileged user accessing a certain server. From the session monitoring, we have the activity recorded, and we have the log activity also. What do? We build the user profiles of it. This privileged user behavior analytics contains many information: login time, locations, hosts, keystroke modes, what applications being used. Peer groups is an interesting point. With the peer groups, we are able to identify users who are working in a similar environment, in a similar role, and if what I wanted to say with it, so sorry, I have to rephrase. We have the baseline for the user. And we not only have the baseline for the user, but we have the baseline for the peer groups of the user. That means that if I'm a database administrator in a certain role, and I'm administering 10 given machines in my infrastructure, and there are 2 more guys in my company who does the same, and suddenly I start to connect to network devices, maybe I'm allowed to, because why not? It would trigger an alert, because my role and my tasks were not allowing me to do it. So comparing my current activity to my peers' common baseline, we point this anomaly out. So even if I do actions which I'm allowed to do, but it's suspicious, you can already have the alert. And what if this privileged user, he's bribed by the Chinese or whatsoever, starts to do nasty things? Or just simply his credentials were stolen in this case. What we will see is he's using different comments, what he's usually using, and his keystrokes are different, the dynamics of the keystrokes. We have roughly 50 algorithms looking at the keystrokes, so it's not only that your typing speed is different, but the group of the keys, what you usually use, is different, and so on. So it's really complicated. I'm a techie guy, but not that techie. So when I talk to our data scientist, it's like another word, really big mathematics behind. So what do we do here is we have discovered this action. It's something already suspicious. So we have sent a notification to the Security Operations Center. The guys at the SOC starts the investigation. But in the meantime, if it's over a certain threshold, be already able to block the connection automatically. So there is no human interaction needed in this scenario, what I've just explained. If you want, you can use predefined rules, but it's not necessary. The machine learning algorithms and the data science behind the solution is able to detect the anomalies and able to react on its own. So what you, once again, saved here is a lot of human resources in terms of the Security Operations Center and a lot of time and money and energy wasted on investigating useless actions. Good. A few words about the journey towards this this approach. So from the preventive security approaches, moving to this contextual one, an essential thing is to monitor your user activities. I have a good example. It's not that good, but I like it. I actually like London. And when you go to London, you're allowed to go out from the bars in the middle of the Soho with your glass of beer to have a cigarette, right? You all have heard about the CCTV systems in London. The reason why they deployed it is that they didn't have enough policemen standing on every corner. So instead of that, they placed this monitoring CCTV solution in each and every corner of the Soho. There is a security camera. So if you go out, you drink your beer, smoke your cigarette, you are free to do it. You can go back and enjoy the rest of the night. But what if you get into a fight, let's say? You break your glass, you do something nasty. There is 2 men watching these CCTV cameras in their operations center instead of hundreds of policemen standing on every corner. And if you do something nasty, they can interact. They can come, they can find you, they will be able to identify you because of the recordings. So you have the freedom until you do something which is not right. That's actually pretty much summarizes what we think about the user monitoring and the necessity of it. As I talked about already, the business as usual baseline using our machine learning algorithms. And this is an interesting point, discover the unknown threats. So I've heard some words about the Gartner's Magic Quadrant and these things. That's a similar story to that. There is a even more magical quadrant where we have the threats separated. So there are, I have a slide about that which I wanted to show you. Just give me a few seconds. Okay, so we have the things we know. We have the questions what we are asking. And there are things we don't know and questions we don't ask. This is what I was referring to with the limitations of the human mind and the predefined rule sets in the beginning. So what do we see here is it's already hard to figure out things, what we don't know. There are certain tools for it, obviously. These are the unknowns. If you go one step ahead, what about those issues where you don't know what you're looking for and you don't even have an idea about what you're looking for? These are the unknown unknowns. And these unknown unknowns are actually where we are focusing. So for the other quadrants, you have the traditional security gears, which I have said it's a must to have. But what about that, where you cannot simply build a correlation because you cannot see it coming? Because you simply are not able to do it with your human mind. Therefore, we have the network analytics and the user behavior analytics. These solutions are thinking ahead of us and trying to give us an Good. I will send my presentation out, I think, so if you can get the attendance list, I will send it out. So. Can I go? Okay. You're welcome. So this is how we think it's essential to move ahead, and it's essential to move from the strict preventive security approach to the vision of the context. how does the security layers look like in this contextual security intelligence? In the beginning, we have to collect the data. This data collection is done by basically all of your current solutions. We collect the log data, and on the top of that, we have to collect the monitoring data. After that, we have to understand the situation, what's going on. We have to have the clear vision of what this guy is used to do, everything about the user. We call it CSI user. So after drilling down into the data, what a human would do normally, we would be able to see what is normal behavior, and we would be able to build that given baseline, what I was referring to. And here comes the trick. We will point to these anomalies, which I referred as unknown unknowns on the top right corner. Comparing the usual behavior of the user to the certain real-time behavior, what he's doing or she's doing right at that moment, with the machine learning, we will be able to detect these anomalies and point out, without having predefined rules, the anomalies in this behavior. Good. So a few words about the data collection as it is. I will talk about first of the syslog-ng. This is a log collection and log management solution to gather the data, the essence of the data, for to be able to put the analytics layer on the top. And a few words about the share control box. Once again, if you have any questions afterwards, come to our booth and I can give you a more deep insight to our solutions. Generally speaking, the data, it's giving you everything. So if you have a faulty, a misleading data source, if you have unreliable data collection, how would you expect any kind of a solution, even if it's the same solution, even if it's any kind of intrusion detection system? If you have unreliable data, there won't be a reliable outcome of any analytics on it. So the essence is to collect the data as good as you can. For this, we have the syslog-ng and the syslog-ng storebox. You might have heard about the syslog-ng, even if you didn't hear about the Balabit before. Syslog-ng is known worldwide, I have to say. This is pretty much which drives Balabit, or drove Balabit to where we are now. It's almost 20 years old, right, Tomasz? And it's really mature and advanced log collection solution. So what we face as a challenge in terms of the log collection, we have really high volume of data coming in with millions of EPSs sometimes. So the speed of the incoming data, which we have to analyze, is also incredible. What we have to see here is that this is really the basics, as I said. But if we fail here, we won't have the reliable analytics on it. So we do have to filter this data. We do have to ensure that it's transferred reliably, stored reliably. How does the syslog-ng does it? So we have various log sources. It can be any infrastructure part, I have to say, because if that source doesn't support the syslog protocol or it doesn't support our format, it's not a problem. We can place a relay in front of it and collect the data coming from those sources. Even if they are from UDP, vast amount of data could come from CGNet routers and security devices, what you have in your front lines. If you have a DDoS attack, imagine what kind of log amount could that generate to you. It could be collected. With a well-designed and well-planned architecture, we can easily collect them and transfer. And not only transfer, but right at the collection point, we are able to filter out the data which is necessary for you. So instead of forwarding and loading your infrastructure with a useless and incredible amount of data, you can filter out the data, you can parse it, and you can rewrite in certain cases. For a financial institution, for example, for Germany, there are legal restrictions to keep user data. So what we could do is pseudonymize the data and keep a unique identifier of the user, which could be only retrieved if there is a threat detected. So the everyday security operations administrators will not see the real identity of the users, and it's all done in the basic level of the syslog-ng. And we can forward the data to various source destinations. So you can put it to flatflies, log stores. You can forward it to SIEM solutions, to the syslog-ng storebox, log analytics solutions, and so on. Big data destinations, so Elastic, Kibana, Kafka could be used with the syslog-ng as destinations. What you have to see here is that the syslog-ng is able to forward logs collected to different destinations at the same time. So when you have a reliable log collection infrastructure in place, then you can rely on it with every single solution what you have, and it's utilizing log as the data source. The syslog-ng is capable of securing the data in motion. We do offer encryption, and we also have a so-called RLTP, reliable log transfer protocol. So from the collection point to the final destination, whatever it is, we are ensuring that the data is not compromised, it's securely transferred, and encrypted if it's necessary. With the RLTP, we offer an application-level acknowledgement between the endpoint and the really first log source where we collect the data from, so you can be sure that all the log messages are received 100% consistently. I already talked a few words about real-time transformation. With the infrastructure based on this syslog-ng, you are able to do these transformations wherever they are necessary. So if you want to cut the data into pieces and parse them, or filter out the half of it at the collection point, or you want to filter out only at the storage, you could do it. A few words about the syslog-ng storebox. The syslog-ng storebox is an appliance. It's either a physical or virtual appliance. It offers you a web-based user interface, high-speed indexing, and it is basically what we suggest as the bastion for the log collection. From the syslog-ng storebox, you are able to forward your data, as I mentioned, wherever you want, and it does offer you a full REST API, which enables us to integrate with basically any kind of a custom solution, even which utilizes log data again. Proceeding to the Share Control Box. Share Control Box is our privileged user monitoring solution. It's based on a proxy technology. It does support various protocols, and stepping into the connection with a friendly man in the middle, it could act as a totally transparent proxy solution monitoring your administrators. Why is it good? Because thanks to the technology, thanks to the proxy, the implementation is really simple. Generally speaking, the implementation of the Share Control Box is 3 to 5 days, full scope integration to your infrastructures. And obviously, if you need to have a transparent monitoring, you would need to change some of the routing rules, what you have. But if you would like to stick to a bastion-like operation mode, non-transparent, it takes actually for a demo or POC environment, it takes not more than half an hour to deploy the whole solution. It does serve us with log data and the session monitoring data as well. It can enforce second factor of authentication, centralized authentication authorization solution, and it does record the network traffic going through it. So when we step into the connections, if it's encrypted, obviously you have to upload the encryption key. It stores the network traffic, and we rebuild the sessions from this network traffic stored in the box as it happened in real time, without constraints. No resolution limitation. There are no other limitations like as the agent-based solutions or jump-host-based solutions. We do support SSH, STP, SFTP protocols, HTTP, HTTPS, Telnet, RDP, VNC, and Citrix IC protocols. And the reason why we think it's an awesome solution, that without having the need for the agents, you can monitor the connections towards any kind of a mainframe firewall network device. You are not able to install an agent on these devices normally, because they have operating systems on their own, and they are not allowing you to install any kind of an agent. But with the proxy-based technology, it's solved. On the client side, you can always use your standard tools, so NSDSC, PuTTY, normal tenant client could be used. There is no need for extra application deployment in your client infrastructure, which also helps and enables us to do the fast integration and seamless integration. In the next few slides, I have some nice features shown. So one of our favorite solutions is the 4-eyes control. This 4-eyes control, the 4-eyes principle, is based on the concept that if there is a connection from, for example, an outsourcing partner, as I mentioned in the beginning, the shared control box is able to pause this connection until an external authorizer comes to the UI of the shared control box, approves this connection, describes his action, why did he approve it, and if this connection is built up afterwards, you are able to follow the session in real time in case of RDP, Citrix ICA, VNC, SSH, and so on. So the auditor could keep an eye, a real human eye, already on the actions going through and going on in this session. I mentioned a few words about the real-time prevention. In command line sessions, we are able to detect commands. These are still the predefined rules. You have to define which commands would you like to allow your administrators to run, which not. We can detect screen content and credit card data. And in the graphical sessions, we are able to detect window titles. How we do it? Jump host and agent-based solutions, usually, for them, it's not that hard. If with the agent-based, they simply detect the windows in the Windows environment or in the Citrix, and be able to detect. For our case, we had to utilize an OCR, on-screen character recognition engine. And this on-screen character recognition engine is taking a look at the window titles in the graphical sessions, but only the window titles in real time. And if we have these window titles detected, we can also have the alerting as an action or the termination of the sessions. It's good that I come to this point because I nearly forget, but this OCR engine, a slightly different and more advanced one, is running on the sessions after you close it. So you are able to do a full text search on every single index session, what we have recorded on HTTP, Citrix, VNC, RDP protocols. So you can do a free text search. If there was a word secret or, I don't know, ipconfig visible on anywhere in the session, on the screen, you will be able to search for it in the audit trails. And the good thing about real-time preventions is the actual blocked commands will never reach the other side because the proxy cuts the connection. So you don't have to fear that the command was executed on the target side because it would never reach to the target if you set it up so. If you don't want to block the command, obviously it will go to the server, but you can trigger the alerts and start investigating. And as I said, we record the network traffic, but you don't have to use Wireshark to analyze the recordings. It's not a user-friendly tool. Even though I like it, I wouldn't suggest it for the security operations centers to use it for everyday analytics. We have a built-in on-box audit player, and you can replay all the recordings of these sessions like a YouTube movie. You simply click on the play button, and it will rebuild the session and replay as it happened in real time. Good. I think I still have like 4 minutes. So is the reliable data, what we have collected with the shared control box and the syslog-ng enough for us? yeah, so these are the questions what I've already asked. So how would you know when these users did something bad? Are you really sure that you can trust all your people? Generally, yes. The answer is yes. But what if there is an unforeseen life situation when people get compromised for some reason? And how many people can you hire? And how much money could you spend on your security operations center to prevent the humans from doing nasty things? So this is where we come to the user point. So how do we understand and how do we analyze this user behavior and the actions what we have collected? We didn't reinvent the wheel. We are using sometimes 100-year-old algorithms and mathematics to analyze these actions done by the users. The simplest one is the time distribution, the kernel density analysis. It's a great stuff. With this, we are able to identify what are the user login times, for example, for the certain user. Going further, we have the frequent item set mining. So with this association rule, what we see that every time we have the SSH as a protocol and the port 22 from various hosts, but suddenly there is a change in this pattern. So 99% with the frequent item set, we can identify that, okay, this is the usual behavior, and that 1% which is the outlying of these item set, we are able to point it out automatically. Recommender systems and clustering. Most of you, I believe, have used Spotify, Netflix, Apple Music, or any kind of these on-demand streaming services. And you have seen the suggestion lists, the content, what they suggest to you. It's the same algorithm, same idea behind. The recommender systems and these algorithms are taking a look at your what kind of music you digest on a daily basis, and for the next week, the Spotify suggests you what probably the best fit for you. So it's the same idea behind. This one is a little bit more tricky, the comment analytics and the window title analytics. In order to have this, we would definitely need the share control box being in place. We are able to detect every single pattern based on your comments and your general everyday used windows, and we are able to build the baseline on that too. And as I said, the keystroke dynamics, I'm not sure if I'm able to say that word, the stochastic outlier selection. But yes, this is how, this is the main algorithm behind the keystroke dynamics and how do we analyze it. And in the pointing device detections, that is really interesting. I've seen the first internet demos around a year ago. The guys are utilizing around 150 algorithms for this one single mouse movement detection. And in the internet demo, when somebody moved the mouse, the one single movement, like if I would do, I don't know where my mouse is, but if I would do this, from this single movement, they are able to give us with around 50–60% certainty if it's me or not me. Because the movement vectors, the time, the speed, and so on and so forth. If I move my mouse like 25 times, this goes up to 85%. If you move it 100 times, it's 99.5% already. In a normal session, how many mouse movements from stop to stop would you do? Hundreds or even thousands, I believe. So it's kind of an impressive solution to detect the users and if it's you or not you. And we are not saying we will be able to identify who is on the other end. We are saying that we can identify it's not you, because we have it in your baseline. And we have learned how do you act and how do you work. And if it's not you, we will be able to point it out, block your account, notify the security personnel, and so on. And the scripted account detection, once again, this nice statistical hypothesis testing of periodicity. Really good. human understandable version of it is actually we take a look at the actions taken, and if there is a certain action which happens always the same minute of the hour, so 1:45, 2:45, 3:45, and so on, all around the clock, it does happen the same minute, then it's most probably not a human behavior, because you would never be able to do it. Good. So after we have all this data collected, I already talked about the review part. How to review. So what we do here is, instead of having the random sampling, what we would usually do, we put your focus on the important actions, and we point you directly where you have to put your efforts and what you need to investigate. Focusing on these important things is, I like these nice animations. So we have the deviation from the baseline and the risk factor in place. And after identifying how risky is that certain action and how much it deviates from the general behavior, we are able to list you the most riskiest actions in the certain time frame. How about cheating these algorithms? It's cheating one. It's pretty easy. So maybe if I watch you for 2 days, I can copy your keystrokes. We can try. But what about cheating all of them? It's like, I don't know, breaking 160 bits password with a laptop with brute force. So probably it's manageable within 75 years. So it's not what we want to achieve, and it could take a lot of time. And as the closing quote, what is the behavior according to Daniel A. Lewitz? So this is why we think it's really important to focus on the behavior, and why we think the traditional security is good, but there has to be a layer supporting it where to focus on how to detect the internet threats in your organization. And thank you for your attention.